Welcome to day 2 of Genocide Awareness Week. A very successful day 1. Had a nice full room and great programming. So today we'll be starting off with a local Holocaust survivor, Stillman, who we all love and adore here. And we'll have a session on reconciliation, restitution, reparations. We'll also have a book talk by 2 prominent international jurists, Chili Ibeo Usuji, Judge Chili Ibeo Usuji, and William Shabas. And William Shabas will be speaking again because today's a day that we're partnering with the Zorian Institute from Toronto, Canada. So they brought in some speakers for us, and we also have our keynote, which will be Judge Chili Ibeo Usuji as well. That will be at 5 o'clock downstairs in Cour 170. Everything in the room, in this room, up till the keynote at 5, and then Cour 170 at 5 o'clock. Restrooms out that door, out onto the patio, to the right, to the left, whichever side you need. We also have refreshments out there. Caffeine, you need it. Hydration for the desert, and snacks. Students love free snacks. I'm no longer a student, I still love free snacks. And if you're going in front of the camera, do as Lisa just did and try to see if I can duck this myself. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague here, Volker Benkert.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for being here. My name is Volker Benkert. I'm a faculty member here in the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies. And together with Tim Langille, Hava Samuelson-Tirosh, and Chris Holman, I serve on the board for Genocide Awareness Week. It's my pleasure to introduce Risa Stillman and Karen Perna, who are also fellow board members at Phoenix Holocaust Association, which is a longtime partner of Genocide Awareness Week. And we have the president of Phoenix Holocaust Association, Eva Flaster, here as well. I don't want to steal too much from Risa's thunder, but and she should tell her story herself. But what is important to me, so Phoenix Holocaust Association really is about preserving the memory of the Holocaust. It's about educating, and as part of this mission, together with ASU, PHA puts on 2 very important teacher training conferences, one in October sponsored by the Zemmel family, and one this week, actually on Friday at SEC, sponsored by Sam Hilton. So this is really important, the story of the Holocaust, preserving memory, educating the future. But it's also that it is about the Holocaust, of course, it's a Holocaust association, but it is always the Holocaust and other genocides. It is about combating anti-Semitism, but it is also about combating bigotry of any kind. So, and that's why I think PHA and Genocide Awareness Week really are very natural partners, because our mission really aligns in that we are combating bigotry of any kind. Having said that, let me also give a shout out to Dean Jeffrey Cohen, who is here today, who's been a long time supporter of Genocide Awareness Week ever since it came here to ASU. So thank you, Jeffrey. All right, without further ado, let me hand it over to Risa. By the way, if you go out and turn to the left, there's a small exhibition that ASU students have prepared on Risa's life. They have interviewed her. And I'm also very pleased that Karen is here today. Karen Perna, she runs the Speakers Bureau of PHA, and she's responsible that people like Risa are in front of thousands of students every year. And I think that is really one of the most important parts of the educational mission, to get the story of survivors in front of students.
In last school year, we covered over 11,000 people in the Valley, and it probably was more, but that's the head count we had. So just to give you a picture of how far we reach.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you very much for being here to the both of you. Risa, please.
Thank you, Dr. Benkert. Thank you so much for the opportunity and inviting me to tell my story of yet another genocide. I was born in Czechoslovakia, and close to in the Carpathian Mountain area. And life was, it was a lovely little village. Life was very normal. And for children, we played, we went to school and such. I was 9 years old when the World War II broke out. And at that time, even though, you know, you heard a little bit, a war to a child that didn't mean this much terror that was to face them later on. So again, at 9 years, we went to school and such, and that's when the war broke out and things started changing in our area very rapidly, especially for the Jewish people. There were constant, every day, there were new laws that were brought in, and such as curfews, no communication with the outside world and such. And as the years progressed, things got worse each day. We really didn't know too much as to what was happening because of the secrecy of it all. But every once in a while, there would be some news coming in, and the news was not very promising for Jews. I recall at one time a young lady who came to the village, and she went over to the rabbi. She got in touch with the rabbi. She stopped at the rabbi's, and I happened to be there, and I was told, please don't tell anybody that this young lady is here. And so as it happened, they were rounding Jewish people up already in different places, like in Lithuania and Ukraine and such. And they were taking them to the forest, and they were forced to dig their own graves, and they were just shooting him. So anyway, and that's how we found out about different things. As the years progressed, Czechoslovakia was ousted, and the Hungarian took over. And of course, the Hungarians were allies of Germany. And again, things were changing. Food was starting to get in short supply and such. But the war was still far away. And we didn't feel it as much as we thought, so many other people. And in 1942, I believe, the Hungarians took over. And at the age of 14, I found that I found myself deported to Auschwitz, Germany. Arriving in Auschwitz, everything was planned very, very meticulously by the German people, and or for the ones who were responsible for this. So things went like clockwork. I remember it was before you were deported to a camp or so, you were taken to a ghetto in the village or a town, and they gathered all the Jews together. And when they had enough people, they would have a transport out from the ghetto. And that's the way that went on for months as well. I recall it was a beautiful May day. We were told the night before that we would be leaving the city and the ghetto, and to take our belongings with us, including some food. I recall on a lovely May day, we were lined up and made to walk to our destination. And you turned around and there was just a big line of people walking with suitcases and children carrying and such. As we reached our destination, we were taken to the railroad station, and as we arrived in the railroad station, everything changed. They started shouting at us. There were, for the first time, I saw many guards, and they started shouting and putting people into. There was a long train putting people in cattle cars, and as we got in there were like about 50 or 60 persons in a cattle car. Of course, there was no, the only ventilation was there, a little vent. And of course, you all settled down on the floor. The sanitation, there was no sanitation. There were 2 buckets given to use, to use. And I still remember my feeling when I heard the door closed. It was closed to the car. And suddenly you were in darkness. And I just felt a very, very sad and unhappy feeling at that time. We were on that train for, I believe it was about 3 nights. And as we traveled, the train kept on going and stopping quite often. And as the train stopped, the reason they stopped because they were picking up new people from other ghettos. The trip on the train was not the most pleasant. People, I can't recall anybody fighting or having any altercations or so, but everybody was pretty much quiet, and everybody was just whispering because none of us knew where we were going. And so as the trip kept going, I recall we had no water. And as I recall the trips, when the trip stopped, there's a vent in the car. And I remember a man went to that vent and he pleaded for water from the guards. And without an answer, he brought a bucket of water and he threw it against the car. And that was the end of the water that we needed. Upon arriving, after 3 days, and actually I can't recall, it's been 80 years, I can't recall exactly how long the trip took, but I think it must have been like about 3 days or so. They opened the doors. I believe it was a beautiful sunny day, and I went, and I also heard beautiful music playing, and that gave me a lift. I'm sure it did for the rest of the people as well. And I thought, well, the place must not be that terrible after all. So they opened the door, and men in striped clothes, uniforms, came in and started shouting, leave your possessions on the train. Everything will be delivered to you next place where you're going to be settled. So people they left almost everything, and they brought a few things down. We got down to the out of the train, and things changed very quickly. There were, I saw people with guards, German SS men with big dogs and rifles, and just yelling and shouting. And so there we were ordered to line up, and men in a different in one area, women in another, and they uh, an officer with a beautiful, I mean, very, very beautifully dressed, with a dog and a baton, and so he started sorting people, and one person, he would wave who goes to the right and who goes to the left, and so. But I can still remember the horrible noise from that area. There were hundreds of people being, and children, babies, men, women, and the crying, the crying and the moaning and the noise. The selection was over, and a group of us were taken to a big room. There were women working, and we were asked to undress and take a shower. After the shower, we were given a dress that was also a gray and white stripes, and it was that's when the dress was one size fits all, and there were women at also prisoners at long tables giving tattoos, and another group was shaving our hair. So suddenly everybody looked the same. We looked at each other. Of course, we cried because we just cried, and then after we were processed again, we were taken away from the railroad facility station, and we walked to a camp, and we got to this big entrance to the camp, and with a big oval sign above, and that says work will make you free. So again, okay, we'll be working. And again, there's beautiful classical music playing. Needless to say, by then we're tired, hungry, and we get in there. And first of all, I finally found out where we were. And they say, I asked the gal, what's the name of this place? And she said to me, you're in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And you're in camp. The camp was huge. There were, I remember, many layers of barracks. There was the fence was barbed electrical wires, and there were warnings not to go near the fence because you would be executed. We got finally lined up there, and we were taken to our living quarters, which was a barrack with many bunk beds in it. Each barrack held 6 to 8 people, and no blanket, no pillow. There was a little straw on the deck. By then it's evening, when we had not eaten all day, and we're looking forward to having some food at dinner time. However, before the food came, we had to go outside by the barrack, line up, and we had to be counted. And that process took place every day, twice a day, morning and evening. We were finally given, actually, they had asked volunteers who would want to go to the kitchen and bring the big containers with our dinner, and I guaranteed. I volunteered, and which we came, and so dinner that evening was a piece of bread. It must be 6 or 8 inches, and some also soup, and the soup was mostly broth. Every once in a while, maybe you found a piece of meat, and they said it was horse meat, or a piece of vegetable. And anyway, that food was our food for the rest of the stay in camp. We stayed in camp. Actually there were more a lot of people there already. So I remember after the following morning, in the morning we were always woken at dawn, and the first thing you had to do is stand up, because you were counted each morning and each evening. And so the first few days there, we sort of had time to explore. And one thing I remember seeing is that a chimney that was spewing red flames, black smoke, and that it kept on burning, that it never stopped. It just burned day and night. And I thought that there was some factory there. So finally I asked somebody, how come that a fire never goes out? It keeps on burning day and night. And a lady told me, who had been there for quite a while, she told me, she says, that's where they're burning your families. And of course, I'd never believed that. I thought she was just not very nice. And so we sort of got to see that smoke also each day as it warmed. As the first few days, I walked, you walked around in camp, and we saw if there are some other people that we know, that we may know. And as it happened, I did run into one of my sister-in-law, Jenny, who lived in a different town. And so we were together for about 2 days, and then she was taken away. The camp was like huge. I recall we had a couple of lady guards who came in to inspect the camp. One of them was her name was Grace, and whenever she camped, the earth would shiver. She had a huge, very, very loud voice, and she would be screaming and yelling, and what was the screaming? To degrade us, you lazy people. She would just be, it was all in German, of course, and I did understand a few words, and it was just, it was just very demeaning and very uncomfortable. But I know I would try to just not to be in her way at all. And this happened every day. After there, a couple of days, we were again asked to be, line up and be selected for work. And so a group of us were taken, and our okay, yeah. So a group of us were taken, and you had to walk like about a half a mile to the gate, to the main gate. And when we were picked up in a truck, we left in the morning, and we were taken outside of Krakow, and our job was to dig trenches in a field. And so we did that, and our guards were always on top of us. They would even though you were working, it's just a stream of people who stopped to take their breath or so, because that's what they were doing. And many times they would just walk around and with their rifle and hit somebody on the shoulder or the head or whatever. So the main thing was, you know, the main thing is that you were always hungry because that piece of bread and a little coffee, black coffee in the morning. I mean, you only had a piece of bread in the morning if you did not eat your whole portion the night before when you got it. And many times we didn't have that piece of bread because we were too hungry in the evening. So we went out to work every day. Another process in Auschwitz was you went through a selection once a week, and it was Dr. Mengele who did the selecting, and you can imagine what you feel like. You have to undress and line up, and here is this huge, elegant-looking gentleman standing making selections. Well, what he was selecting people who are still able to work, and the ones who were just because people were losing weight and getting weak, and the ones who were not fit to work here anymore, they would be taken away. Many times there would be a mother and or a sister, and they would plead with because they would select one person from them, and they would plead to stay together, not to take him. But of course, that was always to no avail. And unfortunately, the ones that I mean, I was naive enough to think that they were taking him to a place where they could regain their strength. But that was not the case. And so it was just you didn't know what was going on in the world. You were separated from your family. You didn't know what happened to your family. So anyway, we kept going, back to work. And one day, and this was towards the fall, we were marching to the gate to be picked up, to get our a truck to go on to, and there was a group of men working outside on the field, and so whenever we went, we would go by, they would stop and look. And anyway, as we were walking, I heard my name called, and I turned my head, and it was my father, and working there. Of course, we only can sort of our eyes met for a few seconds, because there was no way of me going out of line. Had I done it, I would have been shot, because it would have been that I was escaping ever. So for a short time, I was sort of glad that that he was working, and but unfortunately, he did not survive because he never came home. Right? Yeah. Anyway, that job lasted until the end of September, and I can only say the reason I'm still here is because I believe Germany needed workers. So and the prisoners that have come before me, most of them died because of starvation or sickness. So again, I think it was the end of September. This group of mine we were taken to, and we were never told where we were going or why, to another place, of course, by car, by cattle car, by train, on the train. And I started, some things that stay with you that you really never forget. While we were, the train was taken, there was another train next to me, or another cab, and there were just a bunch of women in that car, and they were wailing, they were crying, and I don't know what the situation was there, but it was so sad. It was just as though they were sentenced to death, I think, or whatever. But I remember hearing those cries, and every once in a while I thought, he'd think about it. Okay, so again, we never knew where we were going or why. So my next job was, we were taken to Bergen-Belsen, and our quarters was in Bergen-Belsen in the camp. And that camp was even worse than the one in Birkenau. When we got there, there was still a lot of people, and barely able to stand up. There we were taken out to a field where we gathered potatoes. I think actually we gleaned potatoes because they had harvested them, and we were picking up the ones that what is it? Is it a truck that picks them up, right? And again, the strict orders were, you are not to take any, don't take any potatoes, because we would have eaten raw potatoes, definitely. And so we worked there, and one day while we were there were also a group of men working there, and we would gather the potatoes and put them in a wheelbarrow, and they would take them down to the farmhouse. And one day there was a man on top of a barn fixing the roof, and he kept on singing all along, from morning. And so finally I said to one of my colleagues there, I said, gee, he's still singing. And she said to me, she said, well, she says, today is Yom Kippur. Well, he was singing, doing the eulogy, the service, and he was also doing the Count Nidra over and over. Unfortunately, and a couple of hours later, we were ordered to go down to the farmhouse, and they were beating a man. Another guard was beating a man with a stick, and then they took us down to watch him being beaten to death because his crime was that he took a couple of potatoes. And yeah, I remember he just when he found that he was no longer moving, the guard still put a bullet in his, and that's when I really felt very low, because I was always all along. I was always pleading with the God, and I was very sure God is going to help us, And I thought to myself, I was questioning how first of all, I was admiring the person who was on that roof, and I was questioning if that really is a God, but it didn't. That didn't last long. Okay, and after that, from there we were taken, and this was like in December, at the end of November, or early part of December. We were taken again by train, and this was, and every time we were taken, we always thought, oh, things are going to be better next time. We were taken to a city in Germany, the city of Braunschweig, and there our job was to clean out bombed debris, and we also on the streets and in residential areas. And that was very, very hard because we did not have any winter clothes. You had no gloves, you had no stockings, no hat. I remember I had little thin jackets over my dress. And there I remember a very, very beautiful act of kindness. A lady who was living in the cellar, excuse me, who was living in the cellar, she happened to come out, and she put a pair of stockings on a rock there in her backyard and motioned to me to pick them up. And of course, there were no pantyhose at that time. And the problem was, and there were no garters with it either. And the problem was also how to keep them, out, but we managed. And that was just, I think she just made my whole month or a week or whatever, because I finally found somebody that I felt people do care. And I really appreciated that. It was a beautiful act of kindness, and I've never forgotten that, really. So anyway, in Braunschweig, our living quarters, were in a horse barn, and it must have been. They must have had some show horses there because it was beautiful. the whole place, the courtyard was huge and beautiful. We slept on cement floors, not even a piece of straw. Of course, no blanket, nothing, and no heat. And in December or in January, that was pretty tough. So all along, people were dying, either freezing to death or from starvation. But we lost quite a few people there. They just were not able to withstand it.
Was that close to the time that it was liberation?
Well, yeah, it was a few, few. I think we left there December, possibly February or March. So yeah.
And you and some other people were, the Swedish Red Cross were there, right? And took some of you to Sweden to recover.
Well, yeah, that was towards the end. That was at liberation. This was again. I still had another job, and that was in. Again, I don't even remember the place, but it was in a ammunition factory, and that was the factory was in a salt mine, and so that was a little easier because you were working indoors, but that that was very, very short. I mean, this was possibly in April, and in April again, towards the end of April, we were taken from there, and we were loaded on a cattle train again, and we ended up in a forest, and it was interesting because we could hear the battles not far from that, shooting. And so we were in that car for, it was like about 2 or 3 days. No food, no water. And about the third day, and again, people were not, I mean, many of them were taken out of there too. And I think about the third day from that train, we were taken out into a field, and again lined up, standing, and there were machine guns lined up around them, and there were also, I noticed, an unusual more amount of guards as we usually had, and so we were out in that field for several hours just standing, and I recall seeing an officer on a motorcycle that came up, and he handed a document to one of the guards. And then we were asked to go back to the car, and we didn't know it, but at that time, the Red Cross and Germany were negotiating. We didn't know that the war was over. Negotiating for to get some of the survivors that are still survived, that had still survived, And so we got out of got on the car in the train again, and we went to a station, and as I somehow I think I was able to read through the little vent the station that said Hamburg, and that everybody who knew the name, and we got off there, and when we got off, we found that the guards that we had were no longer the SS guards, but they were the German, the Wehrmacht, the regular. So we felt that was something different and new. And so we were going somewhere, and I remember there were a bunch of ladies on a balcony, and they started shouting some obscenities at us. And one of the guards, the soldiers, yelled out to her in German, "Shut up, you stupid cow," or something like that. And that was just an unbelievable thing. And somehow you felt that things are different. And so actually that was, that was the time that we were liberated and we didn't know it. And those machine guns that were lined up for us were for us because Hitler had given orders. I found that out afterwards. Orders, if the war had been lost to Germany, I mean, if Germany lost the war, he wanted all the political prisoners liquidated. So I think if the negotiations had failed, then that, because that was the end of the war already and we didn't know it. Yeah. So and
that's when you were able to get to Sweden to recover, right?
Exactly. Yeah. After that, we right, we were taken to Denmark and spent the night in Denmark, and taken to Sweden, where we were under the Red Cross, and they were absolutely wonderful. But that was my journey in Auschwitz, and which lasted a year. Unfortunately, there were many people that were deported in 42, and also 40. And there were Polish prisoners, there were Russian prisoners, there were Jehovah's Witnesses, and it was not always just Jewish. There were a lot of other people who were persecuted, the Romas, the Gypsies, that were persecuted. And so, but how can I say, it was just, a person can take a lot, and physically and emotionally, and the pity was that so many died just hours before liberation. That was the pity. Many knew. Many took their own lives on the electrified fences because they're not able to take it. And It was, uh, it, I can only say if the war would have lasted not even a year longer, there would have been nobody who survived. Because there was no way that you could, yeah. So,
Thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I'm always so proud to be here with Risa because she just, you know, it's always close to me that she shares her story. And, you know, it's truly her story and what she went through. At about the same time, my family was in Germany. And when the connection with Sweden and my family is right after Kristallnacht, which was the year before the war was officially started, my family got very concerned. They'd been trying to get out of Germany and they couldn't get out. So this was November of 38, and they hadn't been able to get out at all. But my mother, who was about 7 years old, and my aunt was about 12, my grandparents and great-grandparents decided, let's at least get the kids out of Germany. You know, at least get the two girls out. And if anybody, you know, can survive, it'll at least be the kids. And so many people know the kinder transport to Great Britain. That's been documented a lot. My mother and Aunt Inga were put on a looser kinder transport that went to Sweden. And so they were put with different families, so they didn't see each other for about 18 to 19 months before they were finally reunited with my grandparents and great-grandparents on a ship going to the US. But during that time, I mean, the age they were, like, I don't have any pictures of my mother younger than 14. And that was her naturalization picture. I do have one picture of my aunt when she was in Sweden because she was a preteen. And so, you know, scrapbooks. And so she had a scrapbook of pictures of the family and a picture of her at the beginning. And it said, "This is me, Inga." So I happen to have that. But otherwise, you know, everything was lost. Everything was lost. I came with nothing. And they managed to get to the US in March of 1940. So they did get there earlier, but you know, we have English as second language now for kids who come here and don't speak English. They put my mother and my aunt in kindergarten. My mother was 9, my aunt was 13 at the time. So they were put in a kindergarten class, and as they progressed and learned the language, and you know, no Sesame Street on TV or anything like that to help them. So they did progress and, you know, move up. But anyways, I'm not going to go into a lot more about them, but that was the tie-in to Sweden and how Sweden helped get my mother and my aunt, kept them alive. So, and my grandparents and great-grandparents, the reason why they were able to finally get out of Germany is because they were the largest cattle brokers in the entire country. And of course, the Nazis didn't want the Jews having a stronghold on any food source, especially a strong food source like the beef. So that was fortunate for my family that they got out a little sooner and they were not in camps. I mean, hardships and lost everything, but you know, didn't have to exist in a concentration camp, which was very fortunate. We'd like to open it up to questions now. And, you know, feel free to, you know, raise your hand. I'll kind of, yes, sir.
Wait 1 second. We need to get the microphone.
Oh, okay. Now, this gentleman right here.
And 15 minutes.
Right here.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was wondering, especially in light of like this past week or so, there's been like reports coming out of the ICE facility in Miami that that people who have been abducted by ICE, that they've been like essentially starved. I think they're only being given like a cup of water every 24 hours. I was just wondering, like, in light of, this new political and social environment in the US, like, how does it echo and what, if anything, do you like? Basically, what do you think can be done at this stage?
So I'm going to cut your question off because we really don't want to get into current politics. Reese is a survivor of the Holocaust. My family are survivors. On questions that are related to our stories, we'd be happy to cover with you. So I'm sorry, we won't answer your question. Thank you, though. Any other questions?
So I had a question about, in like Sweden and like post-recovery. I know that is obviously a very traumatic event. I know that that's not something that you can ever like fully recover from, but how is that process? Just like trying to get back to normalcy?
So how was it in your recovery, trying to get back to normalcy? Because you had to gain weight and get healthy and.
It took a while. First of all, you had to learn how to eat again because the food that you were given many times was too delicious and we ate too much of it or so, and that wasn't good. Yeah. It took a while. First, when we first got to Sweden, we were in quarantine for 3 months. And we talked about our experiences. And it took a long time to get adjusted to the losses that we all suffered. And I mean, those are things that still remain with you. And also, many of us are just a little different people because of those experiences. There are things that I value more than I would have. Material things became very unimportant to us, to me anyway. And I also still am very conscious of not being too picky about food because it doesn't take that much for a person to be satisfied, okay? And as I said, to me, being a good friend, try to help other people, be with other people is more important to me. So, and when you are 14 and 15 years old, you come to a point where you want to join. You can't be living on your own. You want to join society. You want to be like another another teenager and such. So it took a while, but many things remained with us too.
The next question's online.
Okay,
What's a two-parter, but it's from Cheryl Bronkish. She wants to know if you still have your Auschwitz tattoo. And how did you tell your story to your family and when, what was that experience like?
I don't have my Auschwitz tattoo because when I came to the United States, I went to live with my cousin in Youngstown, Ohio, and he happened to be a physician. And he looked at my arm and he said, the first thing, this has to go. He says, tattoos were not so popular at that time. And he was just afraid, that it would cause me pain because somebody would come up and say, is that your telephone number? Or so insisted, and I had it removed at the hospital.
And how did you feel about that later?
I was okay with it.
Okay.
I was very much okay with
And
it.
the second part of that question was, how did you tell your story to your family, your children?
I didn't. I talked about my life very, very little. And that was because I didn't want to inflict any sadness and pain and pain on them. So I really didn't discuss my experiences with my family. My granddaughter, Rachel, she actually got more out of me than anybody else because
Perseverance, Rachel.
yeah, well, she was very, very, very interested in it, right. So, no, like I said, I didn't because it was too painful. And the painful part, we were 6 children. And out of the 6 of us, 4 of us survived. My older brother Nate was in the Hungarian army, and after a while, from the army, he was taken to Mauthausen, and but he survived, and so did his wife. My sister, Helen, lived in Budapest. So did my brother David, who was older than I. He too. And they had Christian papers. So they survived so there were 4 of us who survived Bucha. I had a 6-year-old beautiful little sister.
That must have been.
And a little brother, he must have been 10 or 11. And of course, my mother, father, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that's very painful. And
Yeah.
kind of carrying on with that, my family had not spoken about it either. And they thought, better off to not talk about
Exactly.
it. And Rachel, like you, even though my mother was involved in things, but she was a kid. And so when my grandmother heard someone at Northwestern University who was a Holocaust denier, and Northwestern University, very respectable university, and she said to me, Kevin, how could they say that? I was there. And so one of the things I said to her was, Grandma, if you don't talk about it, idiots like that come forward and say it didn't happen. Well, I opened up Pandora's box on that and heard all of it, but thank goodness, because I'm able to share their story and what they went through. And, they were fortunate not being in a camp like Risa was, but to be a wealthy family, and they had a seamstress, they had a cook, they had someone clean the house. I mean, and they came to Wabash, Indiana, and my grandmother had to be like a housekeeper for a doctor in town. And my grandfather did something with like butchering meat because he had been in, the stock business, cow business. And so he got involved in that. But my great grandparents were too old to work. And so they took care of the two kids who were 13 and 9. So, complete turnaround, from what people were used to. And they started all over, and the resilience, every time I'm with Risa, it breaks my heart too, because the resilience of being able to start over and have a positive outlook is heart-wrenching and heartwarming that it does happen. Do we have time to just take one more question, maybe?
We have one last question here,
Well,
Professor.
yeah, maybe that's a good segue to the question I had in mind. How did you stay sane in something which was really inherently horrific? And how do you stay hopeful while you were going through this? Because it seems like that's what kept you going. So it's not just resilient after the war, but during the experience. How did every day starts anew for you?
You know what? I was a big dreamer, okay? I kept on dreaming. This is not going to last. And I had this hope. I was 14 years old. I kept on, at night I'd be lying down and I didn't sleep. If I could only get the power to stop this, if I can only get some magic in me and say, okay, this is over, if I had the strength. I did not think of dying. I really didn't. I cried a lot. But we also dreamed a lot how things will be when you get out. And very frankly, I unfortunately didn't turn out this way. I remember I was 15 years old, and we didn't know all that was going on around us. There were a lot of atrocities going on, and horrible, horrible. And I said, when the world recovers what really went on, I was sure we'll never have another war. I was sure we're not going to have bigotry, hatred, greed, wanting what you have or so. I just thought at least something will come of this. Also, another thing, there were 1.5 children murdered. And I always felt that the world must have lost an awful lot by that. We may have lost somebody who would have been able to stop all the wars. We may have lost somebody he would have discovered a cure for cancer. We may have lost somebody who would be a leader and kept peace in the whole world. We don't know. That's a lot of people and a lot of people in power that was lost.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really, I'm always amazed when you join us here. It is so kind, so gracious. It's really a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to meet the Stillman family. It's wonderful that you guys are here. Thank you all for being here, and we'll continue in
15 minutes.
Yeah,
10:30.
we'll start at 10:30 again. Our reconciliation, restitution, and reparations panel. We have Avino and Pat from NYU. Excited about that, joining us on Zoom, that is, and Henry Terrio will be here, he's another panelist in person. And so, online audience, back in 15 minutes, everyone in the room. Again, restrooms that way, refreshments out that way, and thank you for joining. But before we start going down.